Hi you guys, it's Arielle. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today's video is going to focus on a day trip recommendation that I have for you if you're staying in Paris, and that is Fontainebleau. Now, I have a ton of day trips that I could recommend. I think I'm going to make this into a series, but I wanted to start with Fontainebleau because I think it's one of the easier day trips to access. It's definitely one of the most affordable options and also one of the most fun in my opinion. In the first part of this video, I want to talk about why I recommend visiting Fontainebleau, why I recommend it as a day trip as opposed to spending a couple nights there, the difference between Fontainebleau and Versailles, as well as a little bit on a village that you can tack on to your day trip if you find you have some extra time. And then the second part of this video, I actually want to take you with me to Fontainebleau for a bit of a vlog so I can give you a little sample of what you can see if you do end up doing this day trip. Now, before we get into today's video, I have to mention that my Fontainebleau itinerary and guide is officially out and on my website. This guide has taken me over a year to create, countless trips back and forth to Fontainebleau. I've had my family proofread it, Jean proofread it, and I've even had a couple of you very kindly read it and test it for me. All that to make sure that it is the most perfect iteration possible. I am so proud of this guide. I really hope that you love it as much as I do. And what makes this guide a little bit different from my other guides for Paris, for example, that are already on my website, is that I have taken particular care to make sure that you have optimal, ultimate flexibility with this guide. What I mean by that is Fontainebleau is pretty peculiar in that half of the week some things are open and then another half of the week other things are open, and it was really important to me to make sure that you guys didn't feel limited in when you could visit Fontainebleau. I know it's very hard to plan a trip and then to integrate a day trip on top of that, so I wanted to make sure that you could use this guide pretty much any day of the week. And so there are two options for this itinerary. For example, if you want to go to Fontainebleau on a Wednesday and you see that option 1, everything is closed, you can revert to option 2, which are equally exciting activities, but just open on the day that you want to visit. So yeah, that's one thing that was very important to me, is that I didn't want you to feel limited in when you could visit Fontainebleau. This guide really is very accessible no matter what day of the week you want to visit. And as with all my guides, you have a ton of different restaurant, museum, activity, snack, and shopping recommendations. You have very detailed instructions for how to get to and from places. You've got links to book tickets. You've got my tips for how to navigate around Fontainebleau, where to use the washroom, where to refill your water bottle, Airbnb recommendations. And I think something else that's pretty similar to my YouTube channel is I always try and insert a little history blurb where I feel like it's necessary. Something that I've learned in traveling somewhere new is that it's really hard to appreciate what you're seeing if you don't know anything about it. And so I try to tell a story where needed, to explain to you the significance of something that you're seeing along the itinerary. That way I'm hoping it gives you context and it allows you to better enjoy your day trip in Fontainebleau. My guide also includes an optional visit to a small village called BISOUS. The reason why I've included this is because it's very close in proximity to Fontainebleau. It's about a 10-minute Uber or taxi ride. And again, I wanted to make this a day trip that was doable without renting a car. And so BISOUS is a very charming village that's easy to tack on to a day trip that you're already doing to Fontainebleau if you would like. And if you are staying in Paris for a longer period of time, let's say you're coming here to study, or you've moved here for a couple months and you actually want to see more of Fontainebleau, you want to explore the forest, for example, I've also included an annex that covers a very mysterious hike that only locals, and very few locals, I'll say it that, know about. And so I think it's a good little add-on if you have a couple extra days or a prolonged period of time where you can soak in more of Fontainebleau and explore the more natural side as opposed to the town and the castle. And one more thing that I want to mention that goes for all of my guides, anything that you purchase on my website, you have unlimited access to future updated and revised versions. What I mean by that is every couple months I go in and I make sure that all the hours of operation are still up to date. I add new restaurant recommendations, I add new information, maybe a new dish that I recommend off a menu. I try and keep them the most updated as possible to make sure that when you go to use it, you have the easiest version and you don't have any surprises along the way. And the reason why I want to mention this or reiterate this, because it is written on my website, is because I know that people purchase my guides a couple months before they travel to help with planning. And so if you have done that, if you plan on doing that, just know that you can send me an email anytime at info@arielleinparis.com to receive the most updated version. That way you're not missing out on anything. Anyways, all that said, let's get into today's video. The first topic that I want to cover is why you should visit Fontainebleau, and I have a ton of reasons, but we'll start with the fact that it's very close in proximity to Paris, and it's very affordable to get to. So from the Gare de Lyon in Paris to the heart of Fontainebleau is a 1-hour commute. You have a 40-minute train ride and then a quick 10-15-minute bus ride to the city center. And you don't have to buy a special train ticket to get to Fontainebleau. The way that the metro system now works is that metros and trains are the same ticket. So you can use the exact same ticket that you use to take the metro to the Gare de Lyon to then take the train from Gare de Lyon to Fontainebleau. You don't need an extra ticket. The trip should cost you maximum €2.50 if you don't already have like a weekly or monthly pass for the Île-de-France public transportation system. I hope that's clear. You can let me know if it isn't, but you literally can just use your metro ticket to get you to Fontainebleau. And I will just remind you that you must tap your metro card on the little posts just before you walk up the platform and hop on the train. If you do not validate your metro ticket, your train ticket, you could get a fine if you're stopped by one of the controllers on the train to Fontainebleau. That would be terrible. So just literally tap your card, tap your phone, and make sure that your transportation ticket is validated before you get on the train. The second reason why I think you should visit Fontainebleau is because it is far less popular than Versailles and therefore exponentially less crowded. Anytime I travel to Fontainebleau, it's like a breath of fresh air. I very often find myself walking around the castle and the gardens all alone. There's a lot less foot traffic when you compare it to Versailles. And speaking of Versailles, due to the sheer magnitude of that palace, it's a very overwhelming day trip. You have the castle to see, of course, but the gardens as well, the Grand Trianon, the Petit Trianon, the Queen's Hamlet. It's very hard to cram everything in the castle into one day. Never mind seeing the castle and the city of Versailles itself. And when you compare that experience to what you have at Fontainebleau, it's very different. While the Fontainebleau castle is still very impressive, you can easily visit the castle, visit the gardens, visit the town, and do even more all in one day. And so I think if you're looking for a more diverse experience, then Fontainebleau would be the correct option. And I'm not saying that Versailles is not worth a day trip, not at all. It's a wonderful place to visit. But if you're looking for something a little bit slower paced, more relaxing, more connected to nature, then I would opt for Fontainebleau as opposed to Versailles, if you had to pick one. They're very different, but I do really appreciate the fact that Fontainebleau is far less crowded and chaotic than Versailles. And I think that brings me to my next point, which is that the main attraction of Fontainebleau isn't just the castle, but also the actual town itself. And this is very different from Versailles, where the clear main focus point is going to be the palace. What I love about Fontainebleau is that you get off the bus, you're in the city center, you cross the street, you tour the castle, but then you can literally cross to the other side of the sidewalk and you have the entire town to explore. You can go to a boulangerie and have a picnic lunch. You can enjoy a glass of wine on a terrace. The town of Fontainebleau is very charming and it's equally as interesting as the castle to visit. And now I think would be a good time to talk about the differences between Versailles and Fontainebleau, because they really could not be more polar opposites. There's no doubt that when you think of a French palace, your mind immediately goes to Versailles, and for a good reason. It is this phenomenal demonstration of opulence. Some of the most dramatic events in French history have taken place here, and it really is the pinnacle of French aristocracy. Fontainebleau, on the other hand, was the king's family home passed down from generation to generation from the Middle Ages to the 19th century. There is 900 years of history in this castle, and compared to Versailles, that's quite a lot. The first stones were laid at Versailles, I believe, in 1607 by Louis XIII. So comparatively, Versailles has a lot less history and is quite a bit younger than Fontainebleau. And the purpose of these two palaces could not have been more different. The Château de Fontainebleau is where the kings would come to relax, to find peace, to find joy. You'll notice that it's built directly beside the Fontainebleau forest, which is the biggest forest in Île-de-France, and that was very intentional. The French kings loved hunting more than anything else. This area, this castle, this town truly was their place of rest and relaxation. It's where they found their joy. And what I think is very interesting is that your experience in Fontainebleau mirrors that of the kings. As soon as you arrive in this town, you'll notice that you feel relaxed, you feel more connected to nature, you feel at peace, at ease, which is very different from the chaotic nature and energy of Versailles. Now, when it comes to the Palace of Fontainebleau, there are many different interesting areas that you'll want to see. You have to remember that the palace is somewhat of a mosaic with different areas built and improved on by different kings throughout the ages. To start everything off, you have François I, who inherited a small medieval castle next to a convent. He restored the castle, annexed the convent, and made it much bigger, connecting both with a long gallery in the early 16th century. And this gallery is likely what you've seen if you've seen pictures of the Fontainebleau Palace. The François I gallery was a true exception of its time and a hallmark of the Renaissance. It was decorated and designed by a series of Italian masters. Off of the François I gallery, you also have the Royal Chapel of the Trinity. It was very, very common to have a church close to the king's quarters, as kings were considered to be a direct link from God to the people, and as such, they were expected to attend mass every morning. Other notable areas include the ballroom and the royal apartments, which include the king's bedchamber, and this is quite remarkable because in 1808, under Napoleon, it was turned into a throne room, and this is actually the last remaining Napoleonic throne room in existence. Speaking of Napoleon, you can also see his apartments as well as the room where he abdicated in 1814, which is so interesting. And your tickets to the castle also give you access to the Napoleon I Museum, which is dedicated to Napoleon's 10-year reign from 1804 to 1814. Here you have a collection of more than 500 pieces of furniture, artifacts, paintings, sculptures, weapons, costumes, and ceramics from his time at Fontainebleau. The gardens are also very impressive. You have the English Gardens, the Diana Garden, and of course the Grand Parterre, which was created by André Le Nôtre at Louis XIV's request. And just a quick side note that André Le Nôtre was also the same man who designed the gardens at Versailles. The next topic that I want to cover is, should you stay over in Fontainebleau, and if so, for how many nights? This is a very common question that I get during my consultation calls. I think that because Fontainebleau is so close to Paris and the accommodation is going to be more affordable, it's less crowded of a city than Paris, people assume that they can just book their accommodation in Fontainebleau and commute to Paris every single day. And I really would not recommend that. I can't stress enough how much I would not recommend doing that. There's a couple things that you should keep in mind. Number one is that trains in the evening are a lot less frequent than I think you might assume. You might have a train every half hour, every 45 minutes, or every hour. So it could be challenging to line up your schedules to get back to Fontainebleau from Paris. And I think as well, it'll be very stressful for you to constantly be looking at the time to make sure that you don't miss the last train. Something else to consider is that door to door, the commute from Paris to Fontainebleau is about an hour and 20 minutes. And to do that twice a day, every single day of your trip, is not just exhausting, but also I think a waste of very valuable time that could be spent doing other things that are more enjoyable. Take it from someone who has done countless day trips to Fontainebleau. Even just doing one once a week can feel exhausting and overwhelming. Now, all that being said, I don't think it's a bad idea to spend one night in Fontainebleau if you have the time on your trip. That is actually my favorite way to enjoy the city because you don't need to rush to get the first train in the morning to maximize the amount of time that you have in Fontainebleau. If you are spending the night, you can arrive a little bit later in the day. You can have a slower day. You can sleep over and then continue your activities the next day. So if time allows for it, if the budget allows for it, I would say that one night in Fontainebleau could be a great addition to your trip, but I certainly would not recommend spending every single night in Fontainebleau and planning on commuting back and forth to Paris if the main reason of your trip is to visit Paris. Now, the last topic that I want to cover before we move to the vlog portion of this video is why I decided to include the village of Barbizon in my guide. I almost immediately fell in love with Barbizon for its architecture and its energy. It almost feels like the village is stuck in time in the 19th century. It's very special, and it's also very different from what you'll see in Paris or Fontainebleau. You have to remember that Barbizon served a very different purpose than Fontainebleau. They're very different cities. Barbizon was not this royal town in the same way that Fontainebleau was. Barbizon became popular in the early 1800s when Impressionist painters decided to come here for inspiration in their art. And as more of these painters came to Barbizon, an inn was open to house them. And so very quickly, this village became the heart of this artistic community. And so not only did I fall in love with this history and the architecture and the ambiance, but the museums and the activities here are just captivating. They're so different from what you have in Fontainebleau. And I feel like both of these towns are very complementary. They work well in a day trip. Barbizon is also just a 10-minute taxi or Uber ride from Fontainebleau. And like I mentioned, it was very important to me to create an itinerary that didn't require you to rent a car. And so for all of these reasons, I think Barbizon is a great addition to a day trip to Fontainebleau and this area in general. So all that being said, I think we are ready to hop on the train and head to Fontainebleau. Good morning, good morning. We are headed to Fontainebleau. The train leaves in 2 minutes. I'm gonna quickly hop on and we should arrive at the chateau area to grab lunch in about 40 minutes. So we just arrived in Fontainebleau, a little late, might I add. The train was 20 minutes delayed and then the bus was 15 minutes delayed. But we did make it, and in time actually for the market, which is good because I stopped to get empanadas. I don't normally stop at the market, but the bakery that I normally go to in Fontainebleau that I love is actually closed for summer holidays. So I'm glad I picked up something to eat. The coffee shop that I love as well was also thankfully open. Now before we head to the castle, I want to have a little picnic in the English gardens, and I also want to show you around the other gardens. We have the Parterre, the Diana Garden, and then we'll head into the castle. This is my favorite part of the English gardens. I love sitting on a bench here across from the carp pond to read, to have lunch, to relax. It's so quiet. There's barely anybody here. It's really nice. It's just so different from sitting in a park in Paris or Versailles, where it's really crowded. There's always people running around, playing music. Fontainebleau, and especially the parks and the forest around, really are a place that you can come to rest and relax. I really do understand the French kings and why they came here. So for lunch, I picked up a veggie and chicken empanada. They look delicious. And they smell good. It was nice because she was also able to heat them up for me. I have my iced coffee from Machina Coffee. And I'm just gonna sit here for a while and try and make a dent in Little Women. I've been reading this for months. The problem is I normally read right before I go to bed, and that lasts for like 5 minutes before I zonk out. So I'm only at page 141 of 530. So that's on the agenda. Also, I mentioned that we're sitting in front of the carp pond. So let me quickly show you what that looks like before we eat. So beautiful, so peaceful. And what's interesting is the color of the water changes depending on the month you visit. We're in August right now, so it's kind of this muddy brown green color. But when I was here in May, it was like the tropics, beautiful turquoise blue water. It was crazy. I look back and I showed John those pictures last week. He was like, oh my gosh, were we in the Caribbean? Like, what is this? We're on our way now to the Grand Parterre, which is the section of the gardens designed by André Le Nôtre. And these French gardens are very different from the English gardens that we just came from. English gardens in general seek to find this harmonious balance between human intervention and nature. While the gardens are man-made, they're still supposed to look somewhat natural, whereas French gardens really show the strength of humans over nature. That's why in a French garden, you'll see very manicured shrubs, like perfectly cut into cubes. You'll see very intentional flower arrangements, colors, designs, intricate fountains, a lot of symmetry. I think you'll be able to notice right away the difference between what we saw and what I'm about to show you. that was a speedy tour through the castle. I feel like I talked about it a lot in the intro, so I didn't want to show you everything inside. I got to leave a little mystery for you to visit on your own. But we're crossing through the courtyard now to the Diana Garden, and en route, I wanted to show you the grand staircase, which is actually where Napoleon I walked down after he abdicated to address his guard. There she is, the famous staircase fit for a king or an exiting emperor, of course. And it's usually not very crowded, although I do see a wedding shoot going on. That's beautiful. But the staircase itself is usually pretty empty because, believe it or not, that staircase is not the entrance to the castle. To visit the castle, the entrance is behind me over there. So you don't really have a reason to walk up those stairs unless you want to take a picture. Anyways, next up is our little tour of the gardens, and then I am dying for an ice cream. It's so hot. I could not be happier. This ice cream is so good. I got dark chocolate, coffee, and I tried their new sorbet flavor, which is pineapple and basil, which is very refreshing. I'm very happy I took it. And also a little tip, do not be distracted by the Amarino in the town square. That's where Jean and I went the first couple times we came here to get ice cream. But Glassico, which is just a little bit away from the center down a hidden road, he's way better and also more affordable. I got a medium ice cream with 3 flavors for €5.50. But yeah, I think that brings us to the end of today's video and this little vlog. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing Fontainebleau. I hope it gave you an idea of where you can come on a day trip from Paris. If you want to check out my guide, it's on my website, arielleinparis.com, and I hope you have a great week. I'll see you in the next one.